of the Most High be praised. We're grateful to the Almighty for another opportunity to begin our School of Messiah Bible Institute class and teaching. Today we're going to be looking at the subject of paganism as we've been continuing in our series and dealing with this subject. We've covered 4 lessons so far, and today we're going to deal with our 5th and final lesson. But before we do that, let's begin with a word of prayer. Abba Yah, thank you for your kindness, your goodness, your mercies, and your grace toward us. We pray, Most High, that you would give wisdom, give counsel, give revelation as we share and teach this subject to your Talmudim. May they have an open heart. May they have an open spirit to be able to receive the teaching. And we will bless you in Yeshua's great name. Amen. Well, today our teaching is going to deal with the pagan system versus the divine system. And I want to say that the purpose for our teaching today is to show a compare and contrast of the pagan system with the system of the Most High. Now, the reason why this is of importance is because there are some similarities as we look at the pagan system and compare that with the system that the Creator has revealed in the Scriptures. So we want to summarize what we've been covering with respect to the pagan system, its common features, also its calendar. And we're going to look at that in comparison with the divine system. And the first thing that we want to do, we want to look at the pagan system. And as we look at it, what we noted is that the pagan system is based off of the worship of the deity of the sun. And we also note that in connection with the pagan system's worship of the sun, it also has a calendar that's based off of the solar cycle. This is very important because we see not only the chief deity being the sun, but also the system of time and how time is relegated, how the days of the week, the months and years are relegated. It's all based upon the sun. Within the pagan calendar, the days of the week are named after deities. And the first day of the week, which is in honor of the chief deity in paganism, is the sun. And so that's not a coincidence. We find that to be something that is definitely a part of the plan of paganism. And another thing we need to note about the pagan system with reference to its calendar being solar calendar, days of the week are named after deities, the months are named after deities. We also want to see how that within their framework, it also has a pattern of their deity dying and rising again. Now, this is something that we see that is a parallel to what we have as believers in the Messiah to be central to our faith. The fact that our Messiah, our Elohim, dies and rises again. In paganism, paganism has built within its framework its chief deity dying and rising again. And not only does the chief deity die and rise again, but the chief deity dies and after 3 days rises again. So here we have some similarity. And the time frame in which the chief deity in paganism dies and rises again is during the time of the winter solstice. So winter solstice occurs in the wintertime, and it occurs between the days of December the 21st and December the 25th, roughly somewhere along about the 22nd to the 25th. And what happens, at least according to the pagan system's perspective, is that the chief deity, which is the sun, dies. And after 3 days, it comes back to life. It undergoes a rebirth. And the rebirth of the sun is all in conjunction with what happens naturally in the creation of things, or based upon how the Almighty has designed everything. The Almighty has designed the sun as it goes through its changes. In the winter season, the daylight begins to shorten itself. In other words, when the fall comes in, you have a smaller amount of daylight as it reaches December the 21st. When December 21st comes, that's the shortest day of the year. Shortest day of the year just simply means that it is the day when you have the least amount of sunlight. It's called the shortest day of the year. That signifies that the sun has reached its lowest point. In the pagan system and in its understanding of things, the sun has died. And what happens is, for 3 days, there is no change. You have the shortest day for 3 days. 3 days of that same amount of sunlight lasting. And then after the 3 days, the cycle begins to change, where the sun begins to incrementally gain more sunlight from day to day. That's called, in the pagan understanding of things, the rebirth of the sun, where the sun now is getting its strength. It's a rebirth, it's a resurrection of the sun, and it's regarded as the sun's birthday. And so what happens is, on the 25th of December is when the sun begins to increase its time of daylight shining. So it goes from the shortest amount of daylight time to now beginning to increase. So each day you get a little bit more sunlight, a little bit more sunlight, a little bit more sunlight, beginning from the 25th of December and moving forward. So it's important that we're able to understand this idea, how in the pagan system, its perspective on its deity dying and rising being associated with winter solstice. And that's something that we want to pay attention to, so that we can always understand that the whole idea of paganism is nature worship. It's the worship of the creation, and it's the worship in connection with what the Almighty has designed in creation. Now, one of the evidences that we can show that the pagan system viewed the chief deity as dying and then rising 3 days, which is seen in the winter solstice and in all of the celebrations that are done. We see the evidences of that. But another evidence is by an image. There's an image that pagans have depicted their deity as dying. And this is another similarity of how the pagan system is very, very similar to the divine system. And it is because the pagans believe that their deity died on a tree. There's a picture that I've had the opportunity to see of the Norse deity named Wodan, or Odin, who is hanging from a tree. They show him dying on a tree with a spear in his side. Now, when you look at this image, the first thing that comes to the minds of those of us who believe in the Messiah is, this is just like Yeshua dying on the tree and also having a spear put in his side. So within the pagan culture and in the pagan system, specifically, at least with reference to the Norse deities, Odin is depicted dying on a tree with the spear in his side. So we not only see that their deity has died and 3 days comes back to life, but also what we see is their deity dying on a tree and having a spear in his side. So we see these similarities. These are what we look at, and we can begin to formulate in our mind that this here is a system that has its origins through the angels that came down, but their purpose was to provide a counterfeit religious system that would mimic the divine system. Now, for those who do not believe in the Most High, those who have this view that all roads lead to the same thing, will lump in the faith of Christianity along with all of the other polytheistic religions because they see the similarities, that their deity is no different than Yeshua in that he dies and then rises after 3 days. That he dies on a tree, has a spear in his side. These are some similarities that have really perplexed people who look at the pagan religions, which have been around for thousands of years, and when they look at those things that are central to the pagan system, and they compare that with the Christian faith, they begin to conclude that all of these religions are the same. And they do not see a distinction between the pagan, polytheistic religions and the religion of Christianity. So as we see these similarities, one can easily begin to find themselves challenging their whole belief system as it relates to serving the Most High from the Bible. But I just want to continue showing the comparisons and the contrasts. We've seen some contrasts in that the pagan system is a solar type of system, that there is the worship of many deities, that it's based upon the worship of the sun, but the similarities in regards to the death of its chief deity and the 3 days being dead and after the third day rising again, and the manner in which their deity dies, it's all similar to the Christian faith. Another thing we want to look at with reference to the pagan system is that the pagan system has a Messiah. And built within the pagan system's beliefs is that their Messiah will rule over the nations. So we see these similarities here. Now, the pagan system, with its belief that their Messiah will rule over the nations, he is called in the Bible the Antichrist. And this quote-unquote Antichrist, it will be more appropriate to refer to the Antichrist as not being one who is opposed to Christ, even though we know that he is, but it would be more appropriate to refer to him as being the pseudo-Messiah. So when the Bible talks about the Antichrist, it's talking about a pseudo-Messiah. And when you look in the scriptures where the Apostle Paul talks about this pseudo-Messiah, he calls him the man of sin. But when you look in the Greek and you look at that phrase, man of sin, it wasn't translated as accurately as it should have been. Because that term, man of sin, the term sin is anomian. Anomian. Anomian means one who opposes the law. So when it talks about this false Messiah is one who is against the Torah. So the false Messiah is regarded as the man who is against the Torah. So what we see is this Messiah of the pagan system is one who is against the Torah. This is one of the ways in which we show the contrast of the pagan system's Messiah and the Messiah of the Most High. The pagan system's Messiah, who is declared to rule over the nations by the pagans, is one who will be in opposition to the Torah. It's very important that we be mindful of that. Now, what does the Bible call this false Messiah? It calls the false Messiah the beast. If you look over in the book of Revelations, the book of Revelations refers to this false Messiah as being regarded as the beast. Another thing we want to note with reference to the pagan system is that the Bible describes the pagan system as a woman. And that woman, as we have looked at in some of our previous lessons, is called Babylon. Now I'm going to go to the book of Revelation so that we can just go ahead and point that out. It's important that we at least look at it, see it. Go ahead and deal with that real quick, because the scriptures speak of two women. One, it calls the whore, or Babylon, and the other it refers to as a woman with 12 stars, and that birthed out the man-child that was taken up to heaven, and that's Israel. But let's look at the woman, Babylon. So we go to Revelation chapter 17. Revelation chapter 17, let's look at what it says. It says, and I'm going to read the first 5 verses. It says, "Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and said to me, 'Come, I will show you the judgment of the great whore, who is seated on many waters, whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and with the wine of whose fornication the inhabitants of the earth have become drunk.' So he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman on a scarlet beast." Catch this now. "On a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was clothed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her fornication. And on her forehead was written a name, Mystery, Babylon the Great, Mother of whores and of earth's abominations." And I'm going to read verse 6 as well, because it says, "And I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints and the blood of the witnesses to Yahshua." So this woman that is called Babylon is referred to as being a great whore. She sits on this beast. All right? She sits on this beast. This beast has 7 heads and 10 horns. Now notice, she sits on the beast. In other words, this beast, which represents the kingdoms of the earth that will be ruling the nations, we call it the beast kingdom. And that beast, once it reaches its final culmination, is regarded as the false Messiah in the latter days. The woman is riding on the beast. So what it shows here is that in the pagan system has been regarded as a woman, except with respect to the Creator, she's called a whore, because she does not follow the ways of the Most High. She has involved herself in every form of immorality, which means doing things that are contrary to the Torah of the Most High. And she is seated on the beast. In other words, she is connected to, attached to the kingdom of the world that is under the authority of the kingdom of darkness, the beast kingdom. So when we talked about this in our first lesson, we talked about how that the pagan system is the visible expression of the kingdom of darkness in our world. And so we see this woman sitting on this beast, and it says that she was over many waters. See that? I'm going to read that again. It says that the great whore is seated on many waters. It means that the pagan system is all over the world. And it has gotten all over the world through the nations that are under the authority of the kingdom of darkness. And so she is referred to as a whore. So here we find that the pagan system is regarded as a woman. That is the expression of the kingdom of darkness. And finally, the pagan system has a Messiah. And I know I mentioned that it has a Messiah, but yeah, it has a Messiah. And that Messiah that it has is expressed through what the Bible refers to as being the beast. So you see these contrasts, and you also see the compared similarities of the pagan system with the system of the Most High. But now I want us to look at specifically the system of the Most High, so we can see the differences. We know that the system of the Most High is not the same as the pagan system, in that its focus is on the worship of the Creator and not the worship of the creation. So that's first and foremost that we need to understand. Within that same system of the Most High, we call it the divine system, that its calendar is based upon the moons, a lunar cycle. When the Almighty gave Moses the responsibility of teaching the house of Israel, our ancient fathers, about the calendar, he determined that the calendars would be based upon the moons, the lunar cycle. And so its focus is not around the sun, but the moon. When we look at the Mashiach, the deliverer, that the Creator, according to the prophets, would send, he would come into the world and he would die, which is similar to the pagan system. And after 3 days, he would rise again, which is, yes, similar to the pagan system. We also know that the Messiah would die on a tree. In our Bibles, most of the time when we read it, and when people talk about the death of the Messiah, it is referred to as Messiah dying on a cross. But in a number of places, it also refers to this cross as being a tree, that the Messiah died on a tree. So we see these striking similarities, for he died on a tree. We see the pagan system sharing the same information and the same beliefs as with that of our belief system in our Messiah dying and rising after 3 days. So one might say, well, if you have all these similarities, then what's the difference? Well, the difference has to do with the fact that the pagan system is against the Torah, and the divine system is for the Torah. When the Messiah came, the Messiah of the Bible, this Messiah did not speak against the Torah. However, the Messiah of the pagan system that is to be manifested in the future, he is called Anomian, the man who violates Torah. He is called Anthropos Anomian. That means man who violates and opposes the Torah. That's what that means. And so what we see, as far as the differences are concerned, is that there are two different messiahs here. The Messiah of the scriptures is for the Torah. The false Messiah is against the Torah. Another thing we want to look at is that when the Messiah of the Bible died, he did not die during the time of the winter solstice, because the Messiah of the Bible does not share in the same system as the pagan system as it pertains to its holy days and its festivals. Our Messiah from the Bible, Yeshua, he died during the period of the Passover and unleavened bread, and he rose on the third day. So we have two different seasons when our Messiah died and rose, and the pagan system's Messiah died and rose. As we mentioned, the pagan system, their Messiah dies during the time of the winter solstice and rises during that period. And within the framework of the Most High's system, there is a woman who represents him. That woman is noted all throughout the Bible as Israel, the house of Israel that is in covenant relationship with him. And we see it described, we see Israel described in the Bible. When we go and we look in the book of Revelations, the book of the Revelation, if we look at chapter 12 of Revelation, I want us to check that out. Chapter 12, I'm going to go to the first verse. And it says, a great portent appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. I want you to catch that now. It says she has what? She has what? Listen to this. It says, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet. I want you to catch that now. Why is that significant? Why is it significant that this woman has the moon under her feet and she's clothed with the sun? Because this woman, Yisrael, which represents redeemed humanity, all right? The whole purpose of the Most High when he created Adam was that Adam would have dominion over the works of Elohim's hands. So it shows the woman with the moon under her feet, and she's clothed with the sun. All right? She doesn't worship the sun. She's clothed with the sun. And the moon is under her feet. Notice that. And it says, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. That represents the 12 tribes of Israel. It says she was pregnant and was crying out in birth pains, in agony of giving birth. Then another portent appeared in heaven. A great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns. That beast that we talked about, that the whore was riding, that same beast has now come to persecute the woman. It says, and 7 diadems on his head. It says in verse 4, his tail swept down 1/3 of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. Then the dragon stood up before the woman who was about to bear a child, so that he might devour her child as soon as it was born. And she gave birth to a son, a male child, who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. So what you see here is the Messiah of Israel that's being birthed from Israel, and this dragon who is the false Messiah, or I will say, who is the source of what will become the false Messiah. He wants to kill the child. Why? Because the pagan system, which is under the authority of Satan and the kingdom of darkness, wants to rule the nations with its counterfeit system. See, we see here a picture of the two systems at odds with each other. We see the system of Elohim depicted through the woman who has the moon under her feet and she's clothed with the sun. All right? And we also see the child that is born from Israel. See, the Messiah comes from Israel, who is to rule all the nations. And the beast, that dragon, wants to destroy that child. I'm going to keep reading. And it says, but her child was snatched away and taken to Elohim and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by Elohim, so that there she can be nourished for 1,260 days. Now, I just wanted to read all of this just so that we can provide evidence of the fact that in the divine system, there is a woman that represents the system of Elohim, and it is Israel. And that there is a Messiah, who is Yeshua the Messiah, that is to rule the nations. Now, for those who would like to lump the faith of Israel in Yeshua as being no different than the pagan system, that would be problematic. Because while there are similarities, yet there are great differences. And the purpose of the pagan system, or shall I say the scheme of Hasatan in creating the pagan system, has been to somehow deceive and thwart men from the true path. But the only way in which a person will be able to see the difference between the pagan system and the divine system is that you have to understand the importance of recognizing that the system of the Most High does not have the same pagan practices, and it does not have the same pagan customs. The pagan system focuses its worship on the sun, and its celebrations are central to its worship of the sun, such as the winter solstice, December 21st and December 25th celebrations. Also, its fertility celebrations during the spring, and its fall celebrations that honor the deity of the dead. All of that is central to the pagan system. However, the system of the Most High is such that its year begins in the spring, and the celebration of the Moedim that focuses on the redemptive work of the Messiah and the restoration of man back to his place of authority and dominion over the works of Elohim's hands. There's a different focus, and there is a difference in the one who is worshiped. There is a difference in the fact that the feast celebrations have a different emphasis. It points to the Messiah, where the pagan system points to the worship of the sun and fertility and death. So you have sun worship, sexual immorality, and death. Those are the things that are central to the pagan system. And all of it opposes Torah. And the problem that we see in our age today, as I get ready to wrap this up, the problem that we see in our age today, where there are a number who were once Christians, but have left Christianity and have worshiped the deities in the framework of paganism, is because when they looked in the Western Christian religious culture, what they saw was a system that was no different than the pagan system. And why is that? Why wasn't it different? Because within the Western Christian system, you have the 25th of December being looked at as the birth date of Jesus, and that same 25th of December is the birthday of the deity of the sun. So if you are worshiping Tammuz in Babylon, you would honor Tammuz's birth on December 25th. If you are in Egypt and you worship their Trinity divinity, which would be Ra, Isis, and Horus, then you would be honoring Horus and his birth on the 25th. If you were a worshiper of the Canaanite deities, then you would be honoring Baal, commonly called Baal, on the 25th of December. So those who are familiar with the pagan system and then look at the Western Christian system and its worship celebrations, it would not be difficult to see the identicality of that Western Christian system with the pagan system. You wouldn't see much difference. So it's not a surprise that you have individuals that are basically saying there's no difference between Christianity and paganism. They all share the same common worship days. Even the spring celebration. Within Christianity, it calls the resurrection celebration Easter, and Easter is the name of the Ishtar festival. That's where it comes from. Easter is the Celtic name for the Ishtar festivals of Babylon. But that name was adopted within the Roman Catholic system, and then as Rome and its church system began to move further and further to the west into the areas of Germany and England, they adopted what was already being celebrated, the Easter celebrations with the bunny rabbits and Easter eggs, which was already something that was a part of the pagan system, and meshed that together. So for someone to look at the Western Christian system, they would readily see almost complete identicality, because you have worship days that occur simultaneously with the pagan system. Now, it's important that I share this because of the reality of what exists. There are many people who were once believers in the Messiah, but who have left that and who have moved over into nature worship, into creation worship, into Egyptology, into Druidism. They've left it and they've gone into the belief system of the pagans because they have seen these similarities. But when we deal with this and we talk about the divine system of the Most High, the divine system of the Most High is different because the Moedim of the Creator shows that difference. Only through the house of Israel and the system that the Most High has designed are we able to see a distinction and a separation between the way of the Creator and the pagan system. And this is why it's so important that we note these distinctions and that we understand that the way of the Most High is seen by understanding his Moedim, by understanding his Messiah, and recognizing that the house of Israel in the Messiah is his people. This is why it's important for those who belong to the Almighty to come out from what the scriptures call Babylon. It is imperative, because so long as believers are still following the celebrations that they call Christian celebrations, but they're actually a pagan mixing of Christian and paganism together, then the outsiders looking in will not see any difference. And those who are educated, those who understand the history and the origins of paganism, and also the history and the origins of the Western Christian church systems, they will identify that it's nothing more than a meshing. So for those who desire true faith and authentic faith, you must go back to the Torah-based system. That's what the Almighty has outlined and designed. And so by doing that, we're able to show a clear distinction so that the system of the Most High stands alone and separate from the pagan system. And yes, we readily admit that the pagan system has similarities. Why? Because it is a counterfeit. Those angels that came down and cohabitated with women prior to the flood revealed to man things that were already known in the heavens. They already knew that the Messiah would come and die on a tree. They knew that the Messiah would come and that after 3 days of his death, he would rise again. They already knew. And so they designed a system that would look like the system of the Most High, so that in days to come, the seed of confusion would be birthed into the earth to cause men to go in a different direction than that of the true faith. And so as we share this so that we could make the distinction, it is important that those who hear this teaching begin to receive the revelation knowledge that the Most High system is separate and to come over on the side of Yahuwah. We want to close on that note. Let us pray. Abba Yah, thank you once again for this opportunity to share this teaching. And I ask that you would continue to pour in revelation into the hearts and minds of the hearers, those who are your Talmudim, your disciples. May they receive the truth from this teaching and communicate that with others. And we pray, Father, that you would be honored and glorified, and that as we make known these truths, your will be manifested. Your truth will be made known. And your people will come out of darkness and be brought into the marvelous light. We bless your great name, O King, in the mighty name of Yahshua. Amen. Well, I trust that this teaching has been helpful to those of you who have been watching, and that it has caused you to have a greater desire to learn more. I want to invite you to go to our website at www.ncmmi.20m.com and click on the link called the Written Word Library. Again, the link would be the Written Word Library. That's in that website that we have. And I want to invite you to go and to look at the resources that we have available. There are a number of written articles, ancient books, and things that we provided to help the believer to grow in their faith and in their knowledge of history, so that they may be able to discover the truth regarding their faith and be able to make some informed decisions about the direction that they need to take in their walk, that hopefully will cause you to return to a more accurate way of serving the Most High based on the Torah. Well, the Most High be praised. Thank you so much again for watching. We trust that you were encouraged. Shalom.